Welcome back to Northwest City Politics in the Know with Juanita. We're glad that you're joining us for our show again this week. We're very happy that there are people like you out in our audience that care about what's happening in our cities, that you're interested in the issues of city government and what's happening. City government is the one closest to you and probably affects you the most. And we're glad that you are following city issues. If you haven't watched our show before, each week we'll have on somebody from one of the 9 cities in Northwest Community Television's viewing area. And we'll be talking about the issues that are currently going on or have just transpired in those cities. And then we'll encourage you to be sure to write down the email and the phone number of our guest tonight. We're going to be looking at Golden Valley issues tonight. I'm very happy to welcome Larry Fonnest with us to our show tonight.
Thank you for inviting me.
We haven't had you on our show before, so we're very glad to get your point of view on Golden Valley's issues.
I'm glad to be here.
And now I asked you ahead of time that I'll let you introduce yourself out to our wider audience. Tell them a little bit something about yourself and how you got involved and wanted to be in city government.
Sure. Well, I'm a graduate of the University of Minnesota with an undergraduate degree in political science and history, and then a master's program in natural resource management. So I've been involved in both local and state politics since I was a young boy.
A long time.
A very long time. And I am a retired small business owner, and been living in Golden Valley for 19 years, and ran for the council and won, obviously,
Right.
and joined the council in January of last year, 2014.
Well, and I didn't ask you this question ahead of time, but is there anything about being on the council that has kind of surprised you?
The amount of work.
Yes.
The hours can be quite grueling at times. It's surprising. It's not only the council that we're responsible for, but we also serve on any number of other community committees. And for instance, I serve on the Joint Waters Commission with Crystal and New Hope. Also serve on the local government advisory board to the Robbinsdale School District. And so on and so forth. So it really will take as much as you're willing to give.
Oh, I think so, right.
And it's a very worthwhile experience. I have learned a great deal about my city and how government runs. It's been wonderful to meet the citizens of Golden Valley and really understand the back story on what is going on in our city.
And then I asked you to think a little bit about the early history of Golden Valley, because I'm doing that with everybody that's on the show, so we can kind of do a compilation of it later on. So what can you tell us about the early beginnings of Golden Valley?
The very beginning was in December of 1886.
Wow.
And it was established as a village. And that then indicates, of course, that in 2011 we celebrated our 125th anniversary, which was quite the event. And it was interesting as I researched this to realize that between 1910 and 1940, the city grew from an astonishing 692 people to a whopping 2,040. It was only after World War II and the booming economy that followed that Golden Valley started to grow in earnest. And it wasn't until 1972, however, that it actually was designated as a city. Up until that time, it was a village. And so that is the thumbnail sketch of the history of the town. It was interesting to do some background research on how the city came to have its name. And there are a number of stories that are out there. The most plausible has to do with the early pioneers that settled in the area, and they turned the prairie into grain fields. And there was a gentleman who owned property where the Golden Valley Golf Course now is located. It was the highest point at that point in time, and he was rumored to have looked out across his fields and commented that he was in his Golden Valley. So that seems to be the story that brought us our name.
Now we'll move on into one of the many issues that we're going to talk about tonight and let people get a little more information about what's happening. But the Burlington Northern Santa Fe Railroad and the Canadian Pacific Railroad have a plan, and it's in the area of Crystal, right around West Broadway and Douglas Drive, whereby they could connect their tracks together.
Right.
And this, of course, has a lot of different ramifications for it. But I think I'll have you start out with, when did your city first learn about it, or how did they learn about it?
We learned about it on January 24th at a legislative breakfast hosted at Crystal City Hall. And it came as a complete surprise to not only our city council, but others there. The Canadian Pacific had been quietly talking with landowners and interesting them in selling their property in order to build this connector line.
Right.
And it was only after one of these property owners called City Hall that City Hall was even aware of it in Crystal. So the councils of the several cities that were in attendance began to research this more carefully, and we realized that this would have potentially very negative impacts on our cities. Maybe a little bit of background.
Right.
The Canadian Pacific Rail tends to run east and west. And they want to build a connector line onto Burlington Northern tracks that run north and south. And they want to bring in additional freight trains running them south and down in through the downtown Minneapolis area.
Yeah, right by Target Center, right?
Right under Target Center.
Oh, under, okay. I didn't realize that.
Exactly. And they're looking at bringing in Bakken oil trains. And I'm sure, as your viewers are well aware, those trains have the potential to be quite dangerous. If they derail and if one of the tanks were to leak and explode. This raised the alarm, and we have been working, we being the several cities that would be impacted. And Crystal and Robbinsdale, of course, would be perhaps the most impacted. And I'll touch on that in a moment. But each of the several cities have passed resolutions encouraging the Canadian Pacific not to take this action. And we have been in touch with our county, state, and federal legislators to influence the Federal Surface Transportation Board to do an environmental impact statement to determine if this indeed is a safe approach to take, or if these trains ought to be rerouted perhaps around the Twin Cities. The Bakken oil trains, if and when they do come, are 100 cars long and can stretch for 4 miles.
Ooh, that's a big stretch.
That is a big stretch, and it would, in effect, block all of the street crossings in Crystal and Robbinsdale. So if there
at
were...
one time.
At one time. And so if there were an emergency on one side of the track and your police, fire, or ambulance are on the other side, they quite literally would have to wait until the train cleared and they could pass over the tracks. And so this is very problematic. The solutions in terms of bridging or tunneling are extremely expensive. And it would be borne by local government. The railroads are not responsible for such matters.
They've got a lot of power, don't they?
They have an enormous amount of power, and really are only controlled by the federal government through the Surface Transportation Board. Railroads also have eminent domain powers, so they can condemn private property and take it for their purposes. compensating, of course,
Right.
the landowner. What's happened is that Hennepin County commissioners have voted and passed a bill whereby they have purchased one of the 3 properties in Crystal for $1.8 million to block the Canadian Pacific in its designs.
Yeah.
Now, the question is, does the county have the power to, hold Canadian Pacific at arm's length and forego eminent domain powers by the railroad? There's a bill going through the legislature, both the House and Senate at this very moment, which would give the county that power. They could say, you, Mr. Railroad Man, cannot take our property. And that, in effect, should block this connector line. And I just want to emphasize, too, for your viewers, that it's not that we're against the railroads in any fashion. They have a very important role to play in our economy. And part of their reasoning for wanting this connector line was to move more freight more quickly. Because, as you may know, the grain being produced out in the western states is not getting to market as quickly as it should because of all the Bakken oil that has been coming out of the Dakotas. So it's a large issue. But the thought of Bakken oil trains running within 100 feet of neighborhoods and schools and hospitals is a very sobering thought. And so we are treating this very seriously, and we hope that we can work with the railroads to reroute their trains to a more safe area.
Well, and then one of the concerns was the number of trains that it would bring through compared to the number that go through now.
Right. On the Burlington Northern Line, there's only 2 trains a day at this point, one going north, one going south. There could be as many as 24 trains moving on that track if this connector line were built. And so that is going to impact all of the neighborhoods along that line in one fashion or another.
Now, and then people could look on their city's website, and they could write to the Surface Transportation Board to let people know.
Yes, and it's a federal agency located in Washington, D.C.
I mean, you can contact your federal legislators, your state, all the way on down, but they're already fairly involved,
They are, and Governor Dayton has written a letter on behalf of the state asking for an environmental impact statement. And so we're doing everything, and we being your local and state and federal elected officials to help address this problem.
So people could write a letter saying their feelings too to this federal agency.
Absolutely.
Now, a separate issue, but still dealing with the railroad tracks, is and it's been called, it used to be called the Bottineau Light Rail Transfer, but it's really the Blue Line.
That's what it's being called these days.
Get the right terminology.
That's right.
But that is proposed to go through Golden Valley.
Yes.
And it's been underway for quite a while, but maybe you could give us a brief history of what's already occurred in regards to this Bottineau Blue Line project.
Certainly. The Bottineau line will run, if it is built, from downtown Minneapolis near the Target Center up to Brooklyn Park. And near the Target campus up there. It'll be about 13 miles long, and they're expecting that by 2030, it'll be carrying about 27,000 commuters a day. So it could have a significant impact on moving people about in our northern suburbs. The project development, the initial project development for the build-out of this extension of the Blue Line started in 2014. And it's continuing today. In the city of Golden Valley, the council established a citizen advisory group on station development. And as you probably know, we're looking at 2 station locations. Both are possibilities at this time. They're not definitely decided upon. The first is at Golden Valley Road, near Theodore Wirth Parkway. The second is at Plymouth and Theodore Wirth Parkway. And there are pros and cons to both locations. And the track itself will be following the Burlington Northern Corridor that we were just speaking of, coming out of Minneapolis and going north to Brooklyn Park. So the light rail trains, the LRT, as they're affectionately known as, will be riding or running, that is, side by side with freight trains as well. And there'll be both a north and a south rail for the LRT when and if it is built. We're expecting that the environmental impact statement will be available probably in early 2016. The build-out, the heavy construction, will be between 2018 and 2020, and then the line would go into operation in 2021. And this rail, if it is built, is a 100-year commitment on the part of the state and the communities along the line. And so this has the impact, has the potential of having the impact of seeing the cities of Golden Valley, Robbinsdale, Crystal well into the next century. So it's no small undertaking.
No, it's a, and in it, there's many steps that have already taken place and a lot of public input into the beginning of the process. So, and it's sort of second in line to the Southwest one, Now you have to meet all these requirements along the way and get all the funding along the way, because like you're saying, it's not a done deal.
No, it is not.
But the part that you're on now, on the train stations, what are some of the pros and cons for the 2 areas that you're looking at for Golden Valley, and that you're looking for input from citizens in Golden Valley, right?
That is correct. And we want as much input as we can possibly get. The station at Golden Valley Road and Theodore Wirth Parkway has the potential of serving, that is, the larger Golden Valley area, assuming certain priorities that the council has are met, one of them being parking, off-street parking for commuters who want to drop off their car and take the LRT into downtown or north. We are concerned about park and hide in the neighborhoods. And so we're definitely hoping to see a parking facility located at that location. The Plymouth location, as your viewers probably understand, is located right on the edge and more towards the interior of Theodore Wirth Park. And there it serves a different community, that would be North Minneapolis. Parking is at a premium, and there's not a lot of room there to build a parking facility, but it does have the potential of bringing people into Theodore Wirth to take advantage of all the recreational facilities that are there.
That's true.
And it does serve an important population in North Minneapolis as well. So again, there are multiple pros and cons for both stations. Both are still under consideration by the Met Council. And citizens that are interested in participating have an opportunity coming up later this month, April 30th, a Thursday, at the U of M Urban Research Center, located at 2001 Plymouth Avenue North in Minneapolis. And that meeting will run from 5:30 to 8 p.m. And there'll be representatives there from the Met Council,
Okay.
and other units of government that are working on this project, so citizens can talk to the people
Right.
who are drawing up the plans and making the decisions. And so they'll have direct input to the decision makers.
So this is an important meeting for people to choose to go to.
It
If
is.
this issue concerns you at all,
Absolutely.
put April 30th down on your calendar, and,
Right.
and then we'll put that date up.
That'll be great.
Right.
That'll be great. The station decision, whether we're talking Plymouth or Golden Valley, is likely to be made towards the middle of this coming summer.
Okay.
And so this is going to be one of the more important meetings between
right.
now and then.
Right.
So strongly encourage people to get out and voice their interest or their concerns. And there's a lot of misconception too, I will add, about the impact of light rail on a community.
Okay.
Property values tend to go up, not down. And over time, as people become accustomed to riding on the LRT, it becomes a way of life. It really will bring convenience in terms of transportation to our community.
Now, I'm asking everybody, because I had run across an article and was following a little bit. The Metropolitan Council is setting targets for cities for affordable housing.
Yes.
And some of our cities, like Brooklyn Center, Brooklyn Park, and Richfield, have been kind of protesting what they've been said. Do you know, or do you have any figures for what the target is for Golden Valley?
I do.
Okay.
It's all in draft form at this point.
Yeah, because they're in the process of
in
doing
the process,
this, right.
exactly. And the goal that the Metropolitan Council has set for Golden Valley by the year 2030 is 150 new housing units. Now that could be apartment, it could be townhouse, it could be whatever. And so that's the figure that we're looking at. And citizens and the city and the council have the ability to comment between now and May 15th of this year about the reasonableness of this expectation.
Right.
And it is only an expectation on the part of the Met Council. They use the carrots that they have, which may come in the form of community development grants or something to that effect. But they really don't have any whips, if you will. Yeah,
true.
It's the carrot or the stick, and they don't have much of a stick. So we're going to be taking a look at this topic as a city council in the future, sometime after May 15th. And looking at how we might proceed going forward. We already have a significant amount of affordable housing in our community.
And that has to be taken into consideration, too.
Exactly. And in downtown Golden Valley, northwestern Golden Valley, and elsewhere, we have a lot of affordable housing that meets the Met Council's expectations. And the property that I was just mentioning, actually the two properties, Central Park West and the Liberty Crossing, both will have affordable housing requirements as part of their build-out. And so we're looking to have dispersed housing for folks from all walks of life in our community.
Now, we're getting close to the end, but I thought we'll touch very briefly on the fact that Winnetka and Medicine Lake Road has an area that floods a lot.
Yes, it does.
And it comes from 3 different cities. Maybe you can talk a little bit about some of the solutions the cities are looking at. And I think it's called the Decola Ponds thing if people look into the city's website.
So the cities that are affected by the flooding in the Decola Ponds area, which is the north central portion of Golden Valley, are Golden Valley, New Hope, and Crystal. A lot of the water that is coming into that area actually is running off of Crystal.
Right, right.
And it's flooding New Hope and Golden Valley.
Right.
And so we're working between the three cities to come up with a solution. And a consulting firm, that is, has been hired to develop a strategy. And we have the initial report on that. During severe rainstorms, there has been up to 4 and 5 feet of water on Winnetka at Medicine Lake Road. And homes and businesses have been flooded. Vehicles have stalled out in the middle of the road. It is a real problem. So I mentioned Liberty Square, Liberty Crossing. A new development at that corner. I might add that they have purchased or have a purchase agreement with the VFW Club, the Chinese restaurant, the CIFCO warehouse building, and the self-service car wash. And so all of this property will be redeveloped into the apartment and townhome development I mentioned earlier. As a part of that, they have agreed to build a vault system underground to absorb or to hold some of this runoff that we've been talking about. We're dealing in a severe rainstorm with 35 acre feet of water. So that's a foot of water over 35 acres of land.
That's a lot.
That's a lot. And so this vault that will be built underneath this development will gather water coming off of Medicine Lake Road and hold it for a time while the 6 Decola ponds that lie below it have a chance to drain. And as they drain, then the vault will be drained as well. So it's a more controlled flow, and we still move all the water, hopefully, or a good portion of it, off the roadways and away from people's properties. As a part of the study that I mentioned earlier, 41 properties have been identified as being directly impacted by this situation. And I just want to reassure anyone who's watching who may live in that area that none of the cities are looking at taking properties or anything like that. We're, as a part of this study, we're looking at ways to help reinforce properties, to prepare them for potential flooding, and to assist property owners in safeguarding their property.
Well, I want to thank you so much.
Well, you're welcome.
We've covered a lot of areas.
Has been fun.
Yeah, so we've gotten a lot of more information. You've got a lot of things going on in Golden Valley.
We certainly do.
And we'll encourage those of you out there to tune in next week for part 2 of Golden Valley's issues. And if an issue resonates with you and you live in Golden Valley, contact Larry Fonnest. Or if it's an issue that you think, wonder what's happening in my city, contact your cities and mayors. Thank you for being with us, and we'll hope you'll join us again next week. Bye.